wait. And baby, I'm TFC till I die.
Hello and welcome to Toronto Till I Die, the TFC fan show. I'm Mike Newell, and we've awakened from off-season slumber to bring you all the latest with your Reds, as the MLS playoffs will probably take another 3 months to complete. But until then, let's talk a little Reds. Some news coming out both from a player perspective and from a potentially a head coaching perspective. Let's sort of get into all of that. Along with me, as always, Jeffrey P. Nesker. Jeff, buddy, how you doing? How's Hamilton? Welcome to the Hammer, sir.
I do not know where I am. I am in between. I don't know where I am, but we made a big mistake. I already told you this. My wife and I don't know what we were thinking, but we thought we'd take like 2 weeks off and just fully move into the house and then restart our lives. That doesn't happen.
That's not how moving works, man.
This is not how it works.
We're
going to be unpacking boxes until at least this time next year, I imagine, and then maybe we'll figure what's going on. HD camera for Jeff. I've been HD camera forever. It's just
it's just a different look, man. You just got to.
It's just a different look.
It's a different look.
It's the widest angle in the world. Like I can fit my whole office in here. I got to figure something out or get myself a green screen or something. But yeah. So aside from discovering what is it? Denningers. I can never remember.
Denningers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Schnitzel, baby. Let's go.
Oh my god, that's happening after.
And you did shorties? You got some shorties?
I did shorties. We did Cowabunga as well. Yeah. Cowabunga, their large size pizzas are not Toronto large size pizzas. I was eating leftover pizza for like 3 days. It was pretty crazy.
Yeah, that's how it works. Yeah.
But I think we're shorties people. I know for sure Alicia's a shorties person. Cowabunga is a bit pretentious, and you order a pizza and you pick it up 4 hours later when it's ready for you.
Yes,
and it is.
And you went to the one downtown, right? You didn't even go to the one that's on the mountain, did you?
No, we went to the one on the mountain and tried to park at the U-Haul next door. Which they closed down. Everybody tries to do that, and so I got locked in like a big shouting match, and I'm figuring it out, man. I'm figuring it out. There are no turns that aren't on a red in this entire city, which is or there are no right turns that are allowed without a red light. Everything's a one-way street. I feel like I'm in Brooklyn or like Detroit or something, but who knows? Again,
welcome to the Hammer,
it's awesome.
Let's go.
Yeah, exactly.
And you got to do the Cowabunga downtown. We'll do that. We'll do the Cowabunga down, and then we'll do a Bernie's Shorties run, because they're right beside each other, so you get a beer.
Amazing.
Right beside each
Amazing.
other.
I can't wait.
But you all did not tune in to talk about our Hamilton haunts. What you really
maybe
tuned
they did,
into, we could do a show on that.
We could.
But you've tuned in to talk a little bit about the offseason and what's sort of happening so far. So for this show, I think what we'll cover today is some of the offseason moves in terms of the roster decisions on who picking up options, not picking up options. They announced that about a week and a bit ago. And then, of course, we will talk a little bit about the Canada Soccer independent report that was released and implications, or maybe not so big implications, around TFC head coach John Herdman, and what does this mean for the future. We have our opinions on it, and we'll do that. At some point, we may have a special guest. We may not. We're not sure.
Who knows? He's a busy man. Have you ordered your Funko MLS pops yet? They're only Busquets, Alba, Messi, and I think Suarez, and that's it. MLS waited.
Well,
to do, Funko Pop.
They had set this really up for Miami's going to make a cup run, and then whoops, that's
I did a guest hit on Johan's podcast today, my friend from Sweden, who's like Europe's like penultimate MLS expert. And I think we came to the conclusion that we're not holding our breath. There's a very good chance that Garber's going to announce that the playoffs have been restructured just so that Miami can get back into it.
Oh, I tweeted out. They're going to look at the CPL and be like, that was actually just,
sorry.
For next round.
Yeah.
They got to play
really
another one to get a second
podcast.
Chance.
We had a super long conversation about how much less MLS we both watch because of the Apple decision to do the wraparound show. and he went into some really big detail about how MLS is tarnishing their own brand, one with the MLS Apple deal, and two with too many teams. Anybody coming into the league now off the back of Messi is going to get sticker shock, because like, who do you follow? There's 400,000 teams in MLS. Do you know what I mean? And it was a really enlightening conversation. Man, if there was a Lolo Funko Turts, I would buy one. I would buy one. I would already own one for sure. And
it's not a Funko,
Jason,
it's just a pocket-sized him. That's it. Yeah.
it's not a Funko. It's just Lorenzo Insigne. You order one and
you just got him. Because that's
life size.
That's exactly life size. Very much life size.
But if he brings all his luggage, you can resell that on the eBay and make a pretty penny, right?
Exactly.
You know, if he comes and he's willing to pay the check with that $15 million, but
man, he could probably pay your rent. You could probably pay your rent with his Celine hoodie. You know.
I mean, Minardi TJP said the same thing that Johan said. And we had this when we were doing Who Are Ya, which I hope we do again the next season. How many times did we interview someone from like Houston that had no idea what was going on in the Eastern Conference?
Yeah.
They follow their team. They follow their conference, and that's it. And
it's very baseball. That's the one thing that MLS needs to be very. I'm sorry, we're getting off on a little tangent here, but we will go.
No, it's a great tangent.
But like, the MLS could be it could be in danger of becoming very regionalized like baseball, and I work in baseball.
I think it already is.
This, like, that's kind of how it is. If you follow your team, you may know some of the bigger players, but generally you have no idea what's happening in Kansas City or St. Louis or Seattle, right? Like, it's generally you're following your team and maybe like the three other teams in your division, and that's about it.
I think the Blue Jays are like a weird exception because they're Canada's team at this point, right?
Yes.
And I do think that we're, as Canadians, a bit of an exception because the Western Conference has Vancouver in it. So we're forever sort of tied to a little bit of Western Conference understanding. And then I think as TFC fans, because the Greg father moved to LA Galaxy, we've also got kind of a vested interest in that team and its performances, or at least I do, right? So there are things that tie us in, but it was a really interesting conversation. I love guesting on his pod. I look forward to sharing it with all of you guys. But
absolutely, send the link out on your socials.
I will on my socials. I mean, it's who knows how much longer I'm going to be on Twitter hell, but who knows, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We just paid for it, and now we'll quit.
All right, let's talk about it a little bit. So TFC on the 28th of October announced their end of season decisions in terms of roster moves, contracts that they're picking up, not picking up. I think there weren't a ton of surprises here, but just to list them off in case you just need a refresher. The club declined the 2025 contract options on Greg Radzinski. Nobody's surprised there. Ame Mabika, not really surprising. Thought they might keep him.
What am I going to do now? What am I going to do now? I got nobody to hate on.
Now.
Exactly.
A little bit surprising on Shane O'Neill. I thought again, just they might keep him for depth, but again,
are they still negotiating with him, or is he done?
From my understanding, he's done, but who knows? They might be. That
is surprising.
Yeah, they did decline the option on Brandon Cervania. Completely makes sense. He was going to make a lot of money next year, and then there's still, Kash Malula still on loan in Morocco. And he's supposed to be back at the end of July. And then they are also have to make decisions on Luke Singh, who was on loan at Atletico Ottawa. And they just didn't make a decision on him simply because at the time Atletico Ottawa were still in the playoffs in the CPL. And then Prince Owusu, which is the big one, right? Is trying to figure out what you want to do with Prince Owusu. Before we get into that, just again, some of the people that they kept, Luka Gavrin, no surprise, Kobe Franklin, Kevin Long, Lonzo Cuejo, Kosi Thompson, DeAndre Kerr, Tyrese Spicer. No surprises there.
No surprises there.
Clearly, that's the young core that they want to at least look at building around in terms of a bit of a core there. But, let's talk about Prince, because that is the sort of, $800,000 question right now for TFC is what to do with Prince Owusu, because objectively, if you look at it from, he scored double digits in goals. He got to 10 goals in all competitions for TFC. So on one hand, you can say, look, as a MLS forward who was not a DP, but definitely a TAM player, 10 goals is not the worst return ever. It's not necessarily the best return, but not the worst.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, I think there is this question of whether he can be consistent. He has purple patches and then he kind of drips off for a while. And then, of course, the other question is he best suited for the style that TFC want to play? And and that's are some of the questions that are being sort of weighed with TFC management. They have until November 27th to make a final call on him on what to do. It does feel like they're trying to maybe get him to stay, but on a lower number, or, you know, there are sort of thoughts out there that they're trying to maybe shop him within MLS to see if somebody will take him. Maybe it's like a sign and trade, like in the NBA. But Jeff, wanted to get your thoughts, just maybe just one on the general announcement of, you know, who's going, who's staying, and then your thoughts on Prince and what TFC may want to do there.
O'Neill's a surprise because he's been a good soldier for the club. You know, we've, as a depth piece, considering his skill set and how often he surprises us, I think it was a bit, unless they've got a player in mind, I think that was a mistake. Now, Prince is interesting. I discussed this on Johan's show earlier today. Nathan coming in, why is Prince still here? Danny coming in with, you know, they didn't make a decision on Prince yet, so they negotiate a lower contract than any competition. They're not keeping him in his current number. Here's my thoughts on Prince. Generally, forget about the numbers. Aside from the one big number, if he negotiate, like if this was Prince at 700K, do we want Prince at 300K? And can we feasibly expect him to put as much into it at a reduced rate as he was doing at 700K? And if it wasn't working at 700K, why do we want him at 300K, considering that he's now blocking the depth chart, right?
And then it may not be 300K, but it might be at like $500,000. It might be at 400.
Well, I mean, if it's more than 300K, I'm absolutely against it. I'm almost against it at 300K. At this point, it's a distressed asset. It didn't work, you know? Like the argument as to, you know, where is he getting the service he needs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Is he timing his runs out? La 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 la. I think is secondary to the fact that why are we limited to the devil? You know, there's 100 million strikers out there. This is the global game. You know, there was enough in the eye test, and I'm talking about those moments where he looked like a newborn deer out there and he wasn't connecting with absolute sitters, that leaves something to be desired. And I just, you know, I just feel like, why go around the maypole again? And Turtz brings up a very interesting point here. 700K is reasonable for a 10-goal scorer. And my retort to that, which was my retort to Johan, is 700K is very different to this team that's in the hole for 15 million on one player than it is for another MLS team that has more money to spread around. We don't have the money to spread around. I don't want to block DeAndre Kerr. I'd like to get a new number 9, and I don't want that new number 9 blocked by Prince Owusu, right? Like, at the end of the day, I just don't think there's any space for the kind of inconsistency that he displayed in his time at TFC. It's not a fair assessment of the player, but life isn't fair. And his career at TFC leaves a lot to be desired. And unless he's willing to take a serious haircut, and unless he's willing to sit back and be a depth piece, forget about him. Honestly.
Yeah, I am of the opinion, and I maybe have come around a bit about this since sort of the mid part or early part of the season, but I actually think you keep him. I don't know if you can't keep him on the number he's at. I don't think, like, I get what Turtz is saying, like probably 700K is somewhat reasonable for a 10-goal scorer.
Of course.
But if you know, if 6 or 7 of those goals are in the, you know, it wasn't, but like, you know, if half of those goals are in the Canadian Championship against semi-pro teams, is it the same?
Take him off
10
the record.
goals against a guy who scores 10 in all of them in MLS play. Right? Like, you have to weigh that a little bit. And I think you also have to weigh, you know, can you get him on a slightly lower number, knowing that he is not going to be the guy and that you can go out and get another sort of starter number 9.
Does he agree to that?
And is he cool with that? Right. The other equation, you're right. Is this a negotiation? It's a two-way street. He might be like, listen, I can probably go to Europe and get a starting spot, and and I can still make decent money. So like if you want me to stay, pay me. I'm a double-digit goal scorer. When you don't even when your DPs who make $6 and $15 million,
here we go again.
Goal scorers, right?
Exactly.
So there is that. Again, like I think. Maybe I came around a little bit about him on the sense that I think as a player who can either come off the bench and make an impact that way, or can spot start for you and give you something a little bit different in terms of his physical play, his hold up play, be a little bit nasty. I wanted to mention. Yeah, then I think there's use for that in this TFC team, but I do think you still need to go out and get somebody who is an undeniable goal scorer.
And isn't that the same profile? Don't we want the exact same physical profile, the kind of hold up hybrid number 9 that Prince already is? So wouldn't we be doubling up, keeping Prince for absolutely no
I'm not
reason?
sure. Yeah, I don't know if you necessarily need a hold up like big number 9 per
what would Toronto be without a big number 9 per se?
Right?
I like recognize this squad.
Yeah, like right. Like I think but you do need somebody who. I think there's a couple of things that you want to look for in this player, and there's going to be more. And it's not the complete list, but it's a part of the list. I think you want somebody who just puts enough fear in center backs that they have to respect that player in his space. When Prince Owusu is scoring goals, you can see that center backs are going to pay him a little extra attention, be a little bit more physical with him. That does suck players towards him and provides extra space for your midfielders and wingers to play, right? The other thing that you want in that striker, I think, is you want somebody who has intelligent movement in and around the 18-yard box and is able to make these runs that are going to either pull defenders away from people or are going to put him in goal dangerous positions. And he can do that at times. But there were also times where he kind of is a little bit static. Yeah. And it just, you just don't, that's easy to defend, in a sense, right?
And I'll even give him the benefit of the doubt and say that some of those newborn deer moments are because he mistimed his runs because he was getting such inconsistent service that sometimes he didn't bother running, and so he's behind the ball on occasion, and we all know who shoulders the blame for that sort of thing. Before they disappear, Danny had something nice to say, something interesting to say about Shane O'Neill. As brutal as it is, O'Neill takes far too long to recover from injuries at his age to be spending that kind of money on him. I think that's very, very fair. We are an injured team perpetually. Terts, again, knowing our injury history, more depth the better. If you're replacing with 2 5 or 6 goal strikers, well, we may be better off. I agree. And Greg coming in with some inside baseball. Greg, I talked to him for over 30 minutes as Prince Owusu at the TFC soiree back in summer. He wants to stay as a starter or will leave. Bye Prince Owusu. Then you don't get like your fate. You know what I mean? Like, and that's fair. If he wants to be a starter, there are a million other clubs that he can start for. I think there's too much water under the bridge at TFC. I think, for better or worse, fair or unfair, the fandom is baying their breath for a big name striker to come in and maybe fix a sinking ship, and it's just not him. It's just not him.
Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Well, no, I was gonna say, just like, I mean, look, again, his argument will be, again, double-digit goal scorer. I was arguably at one point probably your most consistent goal scorer in a team that was extremely inconsistent in scoring goals. At least, sort of going from sort of late May onwards. So that, and that will be his argument is like, listen, you've got these 2 DPs that you thought were going to be game breakers. And in the end of the day, I'm your leading goal scorer, right? So I deserve to start in MLS. And you could see when I get a run of games and we're playing well and I get service, I score goals, right? So that is a legitimate. Yeah, it's a legitimate argument to a certain extent. I think
I would laugh him out of the negotiating room.
Fair. I do think there could be a spot for him on this team, but I don't know if it's as an everyday number 9. Like I think
Turt said it best. Nobody on this team should be a guaranteed starter, to be honest. And so if that's your desire, then forget
Federico Bernardeschi and Jonathan Osorio, essentially and Sean Johnson. There you go.
Yeah. And even then, based on game states, based on opponents, that I could make an argument to not have any of those guys start and coming off the bench. Danny, we need a striker. Oh, I'll put it up on the big board. We need a striker with a gravitational pull. Someone defenses have to respect so we can open up space for the wingers. Our wings have no space because our center sucks. I was saying
earlier,
Yeah, exactly. And Jason, we need to move on from Prince. I mean, all signs point to move on. And
it feels like that's where it's going, right? Like if you were going to keep him, okay, fine, maybe you can negotiate a lower rate, but I feel like you would kind of have heard something by now. With the dates. I mean, look, it's only the 13th now. Again, they have until essentially the end of the month to make a final call on him. But it does feel like this might be a move on situation. Yeah. That and look, you bring back DeAndre Kerr, so you have some faith in DeAndre, right? Like you
TFC's record goal scorer, single game goal scorer, DeAndre Kerr. Don't you take you open with that adjective, please. That's important.
TFC's single game record goal scorer against a semi.
There you go.
Anyway, but like, but like, look, okay, fine, all right. It is the record. That is true. But clearly they believe in him enough that he is a piece that can be a backup or can be a piece on this
team. He's such an interesting skills profile that he brings. It's like having Toss, right? Like Toss was pretty one-dimensional, but you knew exactly what you were going to get, and he ran for days. DeAndre is a bit crafty and shifty, and he's not quite a proper number 9 because he's a converted midfielder. He gives you something special, and I think his role in this team is a backup striker because you don't want to start DeAndre. He's too idiosyncratic for that. You want somebody a bit more traditional.
I think as an MLS, I think he could develop into a decent MLS striker, right? And like whether it goes on to Europe, that's a lot of that is going to be chance and sort of opportunity and things like that. So I'm not even talking about that. But I think he can end up being, I don't know if he's going to be a double-digit goal scorer in the league. I personally see that capability out of him potentially. But again, he would have to get better at sort of reading runs and making the right run and be a little bit more intelligent in terms of where he is in the 18-yard box in terms of putting himself into dangerous 100%. Positions. 100%. But again, that's something he is still learning, right? He's still a fairly young man and still fairly young at the position too, right? So there's still a lot of learning for him. But you do, again, as we've said in this 22 minutes that we've talked about, but also throughout the season, a proven goal scorer is desperately needed at this club. And where they get that, I don't know. If they look within the league, if they have budget to go outside the league and bring somebody in, we'll see, right?
This is interesting, and I always massacre his name. Jeremy Ibobase?
Ibobise, yeah.
Ibobise. He's coming up to free agency, and Johan earlier today suggested, do you think he's a good fit for TFC?
I had mentioned him earlier in the year. I think he would be an MLS. The only thing
he's proven in the league, but he's also
he is proven in the league. But his
San Jose career has been terrible.
Well, because San Jose has been terrible. But his first, I think 2 years in San Jose were actually very good. Like he was double-digit goal scorer. And quite good. Last year was just a disaster for everyone at San Jose. My only thing is now with Bruce Arena there, I could see Bruce just being like, "You're my number 9, stay." But a possibility again. Does that appease the fan base? If it's Jeremy,
that was my question. It
will not appease the fan base whatsoever. If it's not somebody from Europe, and if it's not somebody who's played in the Champions League. No, the people will not
absolutely
accept
not.
I would be happy to see it. Again. It's just, but again, like you're getting a guy who probably will be near Prince money, right? Like he probably makes somewhere near Prince money
but he's got years of experience in the league, which Prince didn't. He's proven in the league, although maddeningly inconsistent. I don't know if he's the right skill set for a Herdman style team, but it's certainly an upgrade. If you're putting Prince against Jeremy right now, I'm team Jeremy all the time, but like you said, this fan base won't be satisfied, and I think that that's an important consideration at this point, considering how long and how desperate TFC land is for a number 9.
Yeah. Again, we'll see. I mean, I look at the press conference. Keith Pelly talked about there's money. There is I won't call it a war chest, but there's money to spend. The question is, it's almost like a question is, do they trust themselves enough to spend it at this point? Do they trust enough in Jason Hernandez, in Sean Rubio to identify the right players that have the right profile, right, for this
Neither of their names are Bill
culture.
Manning, so I'm already happy about it. You know what I mean?
Fair. But, like, you know what I mean? Like, do they trust him enough to then open up that war chest and say, okay, go spend the money on the number 9, right? Like, I don't know if that's the case yet. We'll see. Really, we probably won't get probably a realistic answer to that until the new year, right? Really, I don't see that.
Danny's right. And if we want to go 2 DPs, then it's got to be a decent money U22 punt on number 9. I mean,
unless you lose a DP.
Yeah, the only one we may lose, and it's the one we don't want to now. So that's unfortunate. But yeah. And Turtz already says transfer fee doesn't even count. Go big on a U22.
Yeah, but you still got to spend that money, and the question is, do you have the is that
that's
within
such
the budget?
A volatile market. Like you want to talk about hitting it on a DP? Like
you really gotta do your scouting and really know, right? Because they as much as there have been a lot of successes with U22s in MLS, there's been like some big swings and misses,
abysmal failures. And listen, I'm happy for the team to swing big and miss big, but it's so not in the same breath as Insigne Gate. You know what I mean?
I would argue that I would argue that a U22 player swinging and missing on a U22 player has a little bit less risk than on a big name DP, like that's in their 30s and because at least a U22 player, you'll probably lose money on any transfer fee out if you have to get rid of the player, but you can still transfer the player, right? Like they're still young enough that some team will take a punt and pay a transfer fee for them, unless they're like really insanely bad. But
never say never, Mikey.
Well,
Doug Ford's our new striker. Introducing Doug Ford.
Well, Alex Gallardo is a perfect example for the heads that remember Alex Gallardo, who was supposed to be the next guy, and now he's playing in the USL Championship, right? Like you couldn't get a fee for him. Now he's playing. I think like
I brought up with Johan because he was asking, why doesn't TFC make more waves in the South African market? And I brought up Lucas JHY Anson. I brought up Lucas Janssen and how was it Independiente that wanted to take us over a barrel or something like that?
Yeah,
like they wanted like a $38 billion transfer fee, and then his
he was a hot name at the time. I remember that.
He's still a great player. It's just MLS rules precluded spending that kind of money on that kind of player.
Well, that was a different TFC. That was when you still had 3 DPs and you still had the makings of a championship.
But it's not a different South American market. They see North America, they see dollar signs, and they don't.
Well, of course, right? Like if people are willing to pay $10 million for Thiago Almada and of course you can sell them for 30, then that's great. But I think TFC. If they're going to go into that market, I think you really have to go in for a kind of a no-doubter U22, like somebody who is like, well, you're going to have to spend a lot of money, right? You're going to have to outbid Europe to get those players because those players are already on the radars of European clubs. So you got to either, outbid those teams or present a credible way that you're going to get that player to Europe. So if TFC sign that player, don't get married to them because they're probably gone in 2 to 3 years. That's 100%. Probably the plan. And 100%. And realistically, again, you could get a Thiago Almada, you could get an Ezekiel Barco, who was supposed to be the guy, and then you have to offload him to I think like Saudi Arabia for, essentially not, you lose money on it, right? So Pellistri wasn't a real thing. I don't think
we did lose Pellistri to United and Santi to NYCFC. That was Rubio in his first stint. I'm not so sure about that. And then interesting, James O'Halloran says lots of young talent in Japan and Korea. I hate speaking binary and I hate painting every player from a nationality with the same brush. I'm worried that any player in Japan and Korea won't have the physical stature to handle a 21-year-old center back with his studs out coming to destroy you, especially in an attacking position. MLS is a very, very athletic league, and the defenders aren't afraid to beat the absolute crap out of you. And I'm worried that, without the established, does TFC even have a network in Asia?
Don't know.
Exactly. If we don't know, they probably don't. If they don't, they're making a guess based on transfer market Asia, and that's the last thing I want to do right now. This team needs to swing and hit as opposed to swing.
Yeah, and I think they're looking in South America. I think with Sean Rubio's experience, they'll be able to look in South America. I think there was a moment where they might go look in South Africa, but they're probably going to look in South America, and they're probably going to look in England, and they're probably going to look in. I see somebody here just typing that Scotland. Like they'll go look in those leagues. They'll go look in the lower ends of those leagues.
Yeah. Danny's retort was to my Asian player. Scottish league is very physical. Japanese players are doing great there. That's very, very fair. Very, very fair, and something I overlook. So fair point, Danny. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. So look, I think at the end of the day, just to wrap up with the Prince point, I think right now the consensus amongst fans are probably that Prince isn't back. But don't be surprised if he is. Like if they're able to negotiate a slightly lower number, like, and I'm not talking like significant. It could be like they just say like, hey, 600 and you stay, right? And you'll be able to play. Because look, you're going to need depth. Like again, we just saw it in the last 2 seasons. Like Leagues Cup, stopping the league for Leagues Cup really messes up your schedule. Sure. Like it messes up the amount of games they're playing right now. You have to juggle a very tight schedule at the first half of the season. You have to then squeeze in the Canadian Championship. Then you got to play Leagues Cup. Then you have this sort of 10-game, 11-game sprint after League Cup to the end of the season. Like that's a lot of football that they got to play. So from that perspective, you're going to need guys. You're going to need bodies, and you're going to need bodies that you can count on. And as much as not everybody's in love with Prince as a starter, I think you need somebody that and Prince might be the devil that can give you minutes off the bench.
I think it's weak sauce. I think TFC needs to spend every penny that isn't going into the bottomless pit that is Lorenzo Insigne smarter than that. And I think that the devil is the a bird in the hand, a burna in the hand is worth 2 in the bush, which is my new favorite saying. This team can't do that anymore. It just can't. It just can't. I'd rather they take a punt on player X than the devil here, because we know what we're getting with Prince. We know how inconsistent he is. Depending on him to platoon is suicide. I mean, if he wasn't coming, if he's that streaky as a starter, and you're saying let's bring him off the bench and hope that he's going to hit in that regard, that's craziness.
That's
like try somebody else, please. TFC, for the love of God, like stop being an insane person. Like just don't, do the opposite of what you're doing.
That's a fair point. I can see that. Yeah. All right. So outside of that, I think that's what we have for player movement at the moment. It's figuring out Prince, and then of course
I'm before we get into the Herdman thing, Shane O'Neill I'm upset about. I actually am upset that they're not negotiating. Well, I mean, I've already said it. I think that everything that I said that I didn't want to do with Prince, I was happy to do with Shane O'Neill as a depth piece. I agree he's often injured and he's probably staring down the last little bit of his career, but why can't he retire here? If he thinks he's got one more year left in his legs at a deep discount, I mean, you got to love that. He's why not? Why not? But
well,
again,
I thought that's what we were trying to talk about, like in the last couple of years, about the club sort of divorcing itself from sentimentality around certain players, right? Like
you're right.
Instead of hey, this great club guy, let him finish his career here, even though like injured and not really helping the team. Like I get that, and I don't necessarily disagree with that. Again, you know me very well. I do think this team does not treat its alumni very well, or at least it's starting to maybe get better at that now.
Yeah.
But I don't think there is room for that when you're talking about having to get this team rebuilt and make it relevant for, this team has made it very clear in that end of season press conference. The goal is to get this team relevant for 2026, right? Like they've made that abundantly clear. So if you have guys that are kind of holding the water jug on the sideline, like it's kind of, nice from a sort of raw team perspective. But if that player is not going to be able to give you significant minutes and minutes that are going to
that's fair
really impact the team, then what's the point, right? Especially when they're making, $500,000, right? Or 400,000.
Yeah, fair. 100% fair. Perfect. Move on.
Yeah.
Let's get to
Canada soccer. Yay. The report has come out, or at least the independent report on the Drone Gate scandal. I mean, I think we spend enough time on sort of talking about the sort of minutia of what happened. So I think
we're not going to talk the Rachel Dory episode. We're not going to talk.
What happened, right? You know what happened in France during the Olympics. The report has now come back. And a couple of things I found interesting about the report, like one, they went out of their way to not name Bev Priestman, not name the coaches involved, not name John Herdman, but like, we are not hiring the staff that have been suspended. They were like, shade. We don't even want to say your name. You are, they who shall not be named will not be coming back.
Very carefully
and he who shall not be named might have started all of this. You know, like it's an interesting sort of, the way it's phrased is very interesting. And look, they didn't really tell us anything we didn't kind of already like know. In terms of at least what came out after the scandal dropped, in terms of like, I think the thing that, you know, from just thinking about this from just a human perspective, I think the thing that sort of just put me back was, you know, staff members feeling like they were not in a culture or in a position where they could really go against what is being asked of them, right? They had reservations and they didn't. Now, whether this is all true or not, of course, right, we don't know. But like, we got to take
context matters. Who are these people? Are they presently employed with the Federation? Were they fired by the Federation? Do they have an axe to grind with the Federation? None of that context was provided. They're just It's a Greek chorus of disenfranchised voices, and without a qualification for those disenfranchised voices, it's word salad. And, you know, very carefully written word salad, but word salad nonetheless, designed to affect you emotionally. Having just lived through, you know, the election down south and the cult of personality and all that stuff, it's such a mess. It really is. It's such a mess. So, I really don't think
it's that actually that big a thing.
It's a mess because, let's lay it out, okay? Canada Soccer does have the purview and the jurisdiction to suspend John Herdman in Canada, right? And
yes, kind of.
Well,
like he's not employed by Canada Soccer, right? His coach, like, they could say like, you're suspended from coaching within Canada. Essentially, yes, but like,
I thought that was the ceiling of what they're allowed to do, which would preclude him from coaching MLS games against Montreal, home games against Montreal and Vancouver.
Well, he wouldn't be able to coach any home games. Doesn't matter who.
And home games at BMO Field, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So like, that would be what they could do. Look, I like, at the end of the day, how does it impact CFC? Obviously, is like, John Herdman has been sort of not in that particular report, but in reports around it from Radio Canada that came out with a report this week. There have been reports even prior to that from Rick Westhead, you know, just saying like, look, a lot of people within Canada Soccer and those in the know think that this all started with John Herdman when he was coach of the women's national team. And it followed him into the men's national team.
And conveniently enough, when he came, like, drones didn't exist before he took over. Like, it's just so stupid. Like, drones didn't exist before then, so, you know, he couldn't use them before then. Like, that's a detail that seems to be forgotten in all of this, right? Like, you know, the drones started, you know, conveniently when Herdman started, which is a consequence of timing above and beyond, like, at least 50-50 with whatever malicious intent was going on there. It's the dictionary definition of a witch hunt, right? Like, the case is closed, and this is what we got at with Rachel Dory. The people that were dumb enough to try to fly a drone in a no-fly zone during the Olympics, which is so insanely stupid and also illegal, have been penalized. They're done. The burden of proof is so absolute with those parties that you didn't need to muckrake or do a study or engage in outside counsel. The people that need to be punished for lapses in error of judgment have been punished. I don't think anybody wants to see how deep this rabbit hole goes, and I don't think that this investigation and the findings are unpartisan for the reasons that I raised just then. You know, if you're going to mention this drone stuff started in 2014 without allowing that drones weren't really available for anything less than hundreds of thousands of dollars, like there were no prosumer model drones prior to around 2014, you're not telling the whole damn story, and you're sort of giving about enough information to let the people that are baying for a pound of flesh make their own conclusions, but you're suggesting those conclusions, and you're not being genuine, and you're not telling the whole story. And transparently, you can see what's going on here, right?
Yeah.
And I don't like it. I don't like it. And I also don't like this idea that the most vociferous critics of Herdman are using this as ammunition to get him ousted, you know, and that's it. That's yet another situation. And let's also discuss the real, you know, John Herdman took the women's team to the from minnows to success. Took the men's national team from minnows to success. Nick Bontis bought suits with money, right? Like, who are we targeting here? You know what I mean? And let's even further than that. What, you know, Jesse Marsh is not going to be our coach forever, and be careful about where this witch hunt points, because you're going to end up with mediocrity at the end of the day if you create a situation where, you know, what you're looking for is this idealized version of a soccer coach that's willing to only work within whatever the, you know, the going idea of what is morally acceptable in the year of our Lord 2024 is, or else, right? I mean, yeah. Listen, I moderate the WTR boards, and there are two quotes that I pulled from the discussion there. The first is, I want a coach that's going to bend every single rule to win. I agree, and if your coach isn't doing that, then what the hell are they there for? And the only reason that I think Herdman's is in the crosshairs is because he's not winning at TFC, and that little bit of vacuum, you know, nature abhors a vacuum, has opened up the floodgates to this bullshit, and I'm going to use the S word. And then the other one is, Herdman is not worth the trouble. You know, what did Rachel say when she was talking about, you know, other idiosyncratic managers like Pep? I'm paraphrasing, but she said, when you hire Pep, you have to realize that on occasion he's going to say something you disagree with or really gets you upset, but because he's such a winning coach, it's water under the bridge, right? I don't like witch hunts. I don't like ire being pointed in one direction with no accountability from the other direction. I don't like it when somebody says, I'm going to give you an information dump and leave very important parts out so that you can make up your own mind when you're very much being steered in a certain direction. I find that all reprehensible, and I find this reprehensible, and it needs to stop.
Fair. I'm going to disagree with you to a certain extent. I think one, the drone shit happened, right? Like, it happened. Okay. They did it. It legitimately happened. Both for the men's and women's national teams under John Herdman, under Ben Priestman. It happened, right?
Sure. And I don't want to play whataboutism. I don't want to say, well, the rest of the world does it, because that's meaningless.
We're not going to. I'm not going to get into that. It happened. It happened.
Yeah.
Right. And I think everyone was cool with it until you got caught, right?
Mm-hmm.
That said, I think, to me, the issue around John Herdman specifically, and we can get into Bev Priestman if we want and stuff like that, but we're talking about ramifications towards
Herdman.
TFC.
We're talking about Herdman, yeah.
That. But I think the issue to me is not so much using drones to try to figure out game plan against, you know, teams that you're going against. So, God forsake, man, like, if you're droning against St. Kitts and Nevis, like, really, St. Kitts and Nevis.
And also, it's not like the team that drones wins 100% of the time, right?
No,
it's just more information to game plan against.
Yeah, I mean, like, look, I'm not necessarily a pearl clutching, I need to be the most morally just team to win every game. A lot of Canadians want to feel that way, and I get why. I think it's nonsense, to be perfectly honest. However, I am going to say the bigger thing for me is this whole culture piece that's coming out, right? This whole culture around, you know, you express being uncomfortable with a certain thing that you find that is not sort of, whether you want to call it morally, sporting, you object to just the nature of the work. Maybe you do not find it that you think it's safe for you. This idea that the culture is, if you don't do this, you're out. And not only are you out, we're going to make it difficult for you to continue in your chosen profession. And that's the thing that bothers me. And it's the thing that I've always been slightly uneasy about with John Herdman as a coach, even when he was with the women's national team, even with the men's national team, because that cult, you talked about this, the elections in down south, the cult of personality is what John Herdman kind of hangs his hat on sometimes, right?
Oh my God, that's such an unfair conflation, but I get you.
I'm not saying he's Trump. Like, don't get me wrong, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that he can at times really lean on the ability that he's very charismatic, that he can galvanize people with his words, and a lot of it is for good, right? A lot of it is for good, to galvanize teams to win, for fans to get behind a team and really support. But sometimes that kind of personality can also behind the scenes be used to control and coerce people to do things they may not want to do, right? And to me, that's the bigger thing out of this that makes me go, ooh. Now, John Herdman's not getting fired, okay? At least I think we both can agree, we don't really think John Herdman's gonna get sacked here.
I honestly don't know, man. But before I lose my steam on this awesome retort, that's a nothing burger to me. It's a nothing burger. I mean, sports is like most work environments. You want to staff yourself with ambitious people. And what's one common thread between ambitious people? They think they know how to do everything the best way, right? Yeah. And so you have to have someone at the top that says, I appreciate that suggestion, but I'm the boss, right? And further to that, and I mentioned this earlier, there's no context for these takes, right? Everyone is running to think that everybody that Herdman, the only thing that was happening with Herdman was people going, oh my God, he asked me to do drone footage, right? We don't know where these quotes are coming from. And if it wasn't drone footage, it could be I as the kit guy, I like to fold everything, like an American flag, but Herdman said, fold it the 3-corner way. And I was upset about that sort of thing. And without that context, you're given this sort of telenovela idea of this sort of rot and this cult of personality, and you're only seeing the negative when I can't think of a movie set that I've worked on. I can't think of a barista job that I've had. I can't think of anything in the milieu of being out in the great wide world where I didn't have disagreements with my boss. I'm an ambitious guy. I'm an intelligent guy. I think I know everything, and sometimes I don't, or sometimes I just have to eat the S sandwich because I'm not the boss, right? And I'm telling you, when I am the boss, I like hiring people that do their jobs really, really well, and sometimes that means we're going to butt heads, right? And I just have to hope that my position and my charisma and my humility will allow them to be a little less butthurt when I say, actually, no, we're going to do it this way, right? And I'm not saying that Herdman's perfect, but I am saying I have a big issue with the way that this is being painted in such broad brushstrokes to suggest this kind of telenovela sort of BS situation when we're not getting the whole story. We're just not. And to me, you can't make a move without.
But I don't think it's that broad of strokes, right? Like, I do think from the culture, you have enough people saying this where there's enough to say that there's at least smoke here, right? Like, it's not completely out of left field, and it's not completely baseless.
Does he have? He's a very charismatic dude that's been in positions of.
This is a very charismatic dude who would not talk to this independent investigator, by the way, right? Could find a couple hours to talk to him.
If there's a legal loophole that allows
not to, but.
Well, then and you don't 100%, and if he's smart enough to listen, in these contexts, if your lawyer is God at this point, because the law doesn't, my dad is a retired lawyer, and let me tell you something about law. It's not fair, and it's cold logic, and both the prosecutor and the defendant think that they're right. It's the law's job to put the burden of proof against the passionate emotional responses of both people, right? And that's what isn't happening here. We've got one source that's saying, this is the story, we're gonna paint it, right? And of course John's lawyer is saying, if you're not absolutely required to do it, then don't. And that's a smart play. Why incriminate yourself? It's the same as don't answer cops questions until your lawyer arrives, because they're just looking for a way to convict you,
to
right?
set you up. Yeah, 100%. I just think when you go on a press conference and you tell everybody, look, I didn't do this, I'm confident we'll be found that we didn't do this, and I am going to cooperate with Canada Soccer's investigation, then to not cooperate with Canada Soccer's.
Let's bring up the election
it's going to make people go,
Well, let's bring up the election again. Kamala Harris, your next president, Kamala Harris, until the very moment that she wasn't. I'd like to introduce you to your next vice president, Tim Walz, until the very moment he wasn't, right? That kind of hubris, that kind of, front-facing hubris and talking in absolutes is part of the world that we live in, right? It's the world that we've created for ourselves. And certainly John Herdman isn't immune to that sort of thing. But, if you can see which way the water's flowing, and you have enough money to engage a lawyer that's going to protect you from incriminating yourself, you follow their advice, or you're an idiot. And I'm glad that John Herdman wasn't incriminating himself, because the odds are stacked against him. They have got him in the crosshairs for things that he shouldn't be responsible for. And I said this on the Rachel Dory show, and I said it again. This rabbit hole goes deep. And you don't want to start pulling out the couch cushions, because you don't know how far it's going to go. And I have a problem with anybody looking for that pound of flesh over and above, because they're protecting them. Listen, did John Herdman make friends on his way out of Canada Soccer? Absolutely not. Did he lay waste to that federation? Absolutely. Is there butthurt here and an attempt to even the stakes? Absolutely. And anybody that tells you otherwise is lying, and so far what we're seeing out of Canada Soccer is very much that. It's very much, our shit don't stink, but let me tell you about what happened in 2014. And I think that's very, very dangerous. And I think that it's a lot of smoke and mirrors. And I think that it's absolutely the wrong thing to be doing. And I hate that we're here doing it. I hate it.
But we are here, and let's sort of maybe answer the question that I think a lot of people, and I think we kind of both gave our opinion on it. Does this impact John Herdman's employment with MLSE and Toronto FC?
I think it does.
Do you think he gets back?
I think if Canada Soccer really plays hardball here, I think they have no choice. If he can't coach at home games at BMO, and he can't coach during the entirety of the Canadian Championship, and he can only coach on a rainy Wednesday in Stoke, in this case, St. Louis, the role of Stoke will be played by St. Louis. I don't think TFC has a choice. I don't. And at that point, we have enough problems to worry about here. And this is one of the reasons why I wanted Mr. Rollins to come on, because he put out a Substack today, and it's a little bit of personal butthurt because Herdman and him have some history, but there's also this idea that, they want to make a clean break from the sort of cult of personality that was around Herdman. I think that's insane.
I don't know if you get away with that at TFC.
You can't. And no, a clean break at Canada Soccer from, they want to reassess that. Well, that's a fool's errand. And I think that they've done that already. And I think that they should be using that all this energy towards the future for the future and not the past, right? The ends don't justify the means here. I don't see any wins coming out of this beyond, a little bit of playground, you hurt me, I hurt you back kind of thing, which I'd like to think our federation is above. And if they aren't, then I've got big problems with our federation, and that includes Kevin Blue, right?
Well, I think on the face of it, I don't think Kevin Blue's out to get John Herdman. He doesn't know him well enough. He wasn't the president when John Herdman was manager, right? I think I think the issue, I don't think there is any need for MLSE to fire John Herdman at this point, right? There's nothing.
No, not at this point.
Here, in my opinion,
this is all smoke and mirrors. Who cares? Yeah, if penalties are levied, then that changes.
And especially because I was listening to the Footy Prime podcast. They dropped a sort of pod on this, and they were talking about does TFC or MLSE do this because of reputation? Look, only the sickos are talking about this. General
Yeah.
TFC fans probably have very little idea this is even going on. They may read like a CBC article saying like something happened with Canada Soccer with drones and stuff. But really, if TFC weren't involved, they don't really give a shit, right? Like, so I think at the end of the day, this is really about, is there a chance that John Herdman maybe gets suspended by Canada Soccer or more importantly, gets suspended by FIFA if Canada Soccer pushes to FIFA and say, hey, FIFA, get him, because FIFA still has an investigation open on this themselves. So, does FIFA go back and say, Herdman, you need a timeout? If that's the case, then TFC and MLS, he probably have to part ways with him, right? Like if he's got to sit for like 18 months or something like that.
100%. If it becomes untenable for him to be the gaffer, then there it is. But like, sacking John Herdman isn't going to turn Lorenzo Insigne into a 22 goal scorer in MLS, right? So there are bigger problems than John Herdman at TFC right now, and his name is Lorenzo Insigne, and anything else is a distraction. It's a distraction. It's
well, so the only reason, okay, so I'll maybe walk back a little bit, just in the sense that the other reason they may want to just get rid of John Herdman again is that sort of like, look, we need to clean house in terms of just getting all this kind of weird shit that surrounds this club out the door, right? That means and we don't want to deal with John Herdman shit and whatever's going with Canada Soccer. They're basically saying like, whatever you've got, whatever beef you've got with Canada Soccer, you and Jason DeVos, because Jason DeVos was general secretary when this was all happening too, right? He's assistant coach. Like whatever issues you got with it, you go and figure that out, right? Without us,
we've got our own problems.
We got our own stuff to figure out. Lorenzo
yeah.
Insigne, you know what? You want to do something? Okay, you go, right? And then you bring in another manager and you kind of do that clean. The reason why I don't think you go, at least that's not option A here, is because you're already down the road with John Herdman. And the last thing you want to do, again, when you want to make this team relevant for 2026, is you got to go down another head coach, another soccer head, making decisions on this. Like that's another thing this team just does not need right now.
This is where Dwayne's op-ed got really interesting. Do you think TFC are over John Herdman and are looking for an excuse to get rid of him? Do you think that his charisma wore off, because of the hot start and then the regression to the mean? He has no answers. His humility and his mea culpas with respect to, we're going to take a long, hard look at where we went wrong. Robin Gale and I are going to put up a new vision board and we're going to figure it out this time again. Do you think that they don't buy it, and that they've had their fill of him and that this is a convenient excuse to blame them, to shoot the messenger and eliminate the problem at the same time, kind of thing?
We don't know enough about the behind the scenes to like, on the face of it, no. You've had a season with him. Do you like? How could you really, really judge that?
I love that our chat is like, well, just get Jim Curtin. Like it's that easy.
Yeah,
just call him up and he's here. He's on the next
well, I
plane.
mean, hey, look. Okay, so I'll address that in a second. In terms of your first question, on the face of it, no. Right, like again, we kind of talked about it on our episode at the end of the press conference, right? Like just objectively, this team got better, right? It conceded about the same amount of goals. It didn't score a lot, but the points got better. The vibes in the first half of the season were a good indicator. Things fell apart in the second half of the season. Yes, a lot of that had to do with schedule, players getting injured, things like that. Vibes also went down. I think a lot of the players admitted to that as well. Yeah, but I don't think you're at a point where you really need to sack John Herdman. Now, if there are things behind the scenes where John Herdman is, like you said, the charisma's worn off, or he's become quote unquote a problem, right? In the sense that like either with Jason Hernandez or with other members of MLSC
the kick guy
brass,
who wants to fold it that way. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, if that's a thing, then look, we don't know about any of that. But if that's a thing, then okay, maybe there is a reason or excuse to get rid of him. But like, look, it's November 13th now, right? At the end of the month, you got to make a decision on Prince Owusu. We just spent like 20 minutes talking about that. Then you got to go into MLS funny draft season where you've got every little draft going on. So you got to pick players there. Then you're into January and you're in the European windows open and you're probably trying to make some signings there. And then you're in training camp. And do you really want to be making this decision, at the end of November? Let's just say you sack him. Then you're going to try to get Jim Curtin in or whoever at that point to then now put coach what are we're really doing that?
Yeah.
Like, and I mean, it had to be things would have to have been really, really bad in the background for
well, even if they're only a little bit bad, this is a target of opportunity. It's a get out of jail free card, right? If there are sanctions from FIFA and Canada Soccer, that means they can cancel his contract with cause and not be on the hook to pay him out for the last little bit. It's an opportunity they may never get again, and therefore it has to be considered. And that's why I think that there's more going on here than just a simple no answer. I think that maybe, if there's smoke, there's fire, and they have to be considering it. To get to the Curtin situation, Jim Curtin coaching Lorenzo Insigne. I mean, that is levels higher than any player Curtin's ever coached in his entire professional 100%. Career, right? 100%. Like, people thinking that he's just going to walk in, Jim Curtin, and Lorenzo Insigne and Curtin are going to click. I want whatever you're smoking. Seriously, like, deliver it to my house. I'll send you my address. Like, guys, come on. If we learn anything from the Lorenzo Insigne situation, it's that there's no easy fix for this. There's no easy fix for this. No. And the anticipation that Curtin's going to come when nobody's been able to unlock the skill set of this team and everyone's gone down in flames. Come on, guys. I don't care how deep MLSE's pockets are. These people have careers that they want to maintain. They're not just gonna.
And look, like, Toronto FC as a job is still attractive in MLS, but I think there is a little bit of that. If you're going in, you better make sure you have some kind of control, or
rent. Don't buy.
Yeah, it's kind of like I kind of hate to say it's kind of like Ten Hag with United, right? Like
100%, 100%.
As much as Ten Hag was a failure at United and it didn't work out, the one thing Ten Hag came in when he was like, "Listen, you guys are a tire fire, and I need control of this." Right? Like, I'm not coming in here if like the board's not on board, and if this director is not on board, and like you don't give me control of this, then I ain't doing this, right? And they gave him the house, right? They gave him the keys. It didn't work out in the end, but like, and he nearly burnt the house down. But like that's what coaches in MLS will now do with TFC is they're going to come in and they're going to be like, "Listen, you guys have been a mess for a couple of years. Sometimes I don't know who's running the ship, so I'm going to run the ship." Okay.
Yeah.
And you're going to give me
your
that
checks
control.
better clear because they're getting cashed immediately.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
I know not to hang a poster in my office because there's a very good chance I'm here for 6 months. Look, I'm watching Luis Riaz's soul leave his body in the chat right now. So this team wastes more years until they offload Insigne because the coach can't handle him. The short answer, Luis, yes.
Yeah. Right. Like unless somebody's willing to eat that money.
Yeah.
Right. Or unless MLSE's willing to eat the money.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I actually think MLSE should do. Just bite the bullet and do it. I know a lot of people think that's crazy, and I understand why. But at a certain point, you're going to have to eat the money. And then this just from Jason to why not Bobby? I think he can do it. My quote to you is, why would Bobby? Why would Bobby want to take over?
He's on the ascendancy. Why would he come to this screaming garbage fire and risk destroying his reputation?
Like, he get a pay raise and it's a bigger profile club. Of course, that's thing. But like, you don't understand. Like, Bobby Smyrna could do whatever the hell he wants at Forge, right? Like, why would he come here where he's got to have all that bureaucracy to deal with TFC?
No way. Come on, guys. Guys. Yeah. No.
Right.
So it's a terrible position that we're in. And I'm glad that more people are unfortunately slowly realizing just how effed we are for the time being. We really are.
I mean, look, I think right now we're riding with John Herdman unless it becomes impossible. Yes. Like the situation would literally have to be like Canada Soccer or FIFA or somebody's coming in and saying like,
this is
and
perfect. I'm going to get a t-shirt. It's like taking over the Titanic after hitting the iceberg. 100%. And who'd want to captain the Titanic when it's already sinking?
Yeah.
Right?
Like, yeah. So from that perspective, I think we've got Herdman. Again, look, if something could happen or something could come out and we realize that, John Herdman, pissing
eats
like,
babies,
a whole bunch of people's coffees and stuff like that. And
spike the punch bowl with LSD. Yeah, 100%.
Exactly. And then they're like, oh yeah, we gotta get rid of him. It's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But on the face of it, I can't see this report or anything.
I leave a margin for TFC doing a panic sacking because they're like that we'll never be in a better position to do it, to pull the plug, and we're just gonna pull the plug now, because we got cold feet. But yeah, I agree with you. I think it's going to take something major in order to upset the apple cart there. Something major.
Yeah, for sure. All right. I think we'll wrap it up there. Thank you, everybody, for tuning into another episode of Toronto Till I Die. We really appreciate it. You can find us on all the socials. For right now, I think we're going to be doing periodic episodes until we got some more news in terms of player signings. So, like, if something obviously breaks with Prince Owusu, we might come back on. And obviously, in December, we might actually come back a little bit more because there's going to be more player roster stuff between the expansion draft, the re-entry draft, the actual MLS super draft, a week draft season here at TTID.
My last question, how much MLS playoffs have you been watching?
Probably more than I thought I would, but not enough.
Me too.
Like
not
you know
enough
what I mean?
either, yeah.
So maybe we'll leave off on this really quickly. And this is just me. I don't mind 3-game series or things like that.
I get what you mean. I get it. Suns. Yeah.
It would be better if they just made them like quick series, like they do in baseball, right? Like baseball.
Oh yeah,
uses
this 18 months in between is just
like if you do this within get this done in a week, right? Get this done in a week. Play us Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday, right? And do that because. To me, having this like we play game 1, there's no aggregate, so and then we're playing the next game a week later, and then the next game's being played 5. Like that takes too long, and you kind of lose interest like in the middle game. Like you see the first game, like okay, I'll watch the first game of the series. The second game, you're like whatever, and then the third game, okay, if it's a series that's kind of intriguing, maybe you'll tune in. So that's what I did, right? Like I watched a lot of the first games, and then the second games I pretty much all skipped, and then the third games I thought were going to be interesting I watched.
Well, I got hot to it. I mean, I'm moving, so I'm not watching much of anything, but like or moved or in the process. I'll be moving for the next 6 months easily, but like in the process of moving. I mean, East is wide open, man. No Cincy, no Columbus. No Inter Messi, Inter Barcelona, Miami. It's fantastic.
Lane's right? wide open for either Galaxy or LAFC to go win this thing. Really,
I sneakily suspect it might be a New York team. The Red Bulls got hot at just the right time, man.
Well, they got to build Forsberg back at the right time. That's the thing.
Yeah,
and Lewis
exactly. A DP that performs. Imagine that. A DP
that doesn't actually cost more than half your squad roster. Cards. Yeah.
Although making fun of Berna right now feels wrong to me. I love the man, but which is so weird for me to say. But anyway, yeah. Good chat.
Absolutely. We will come back
Miami. With, they're still going to win MLS Cup, right?
They're going to beat Barcelona B or something like that. Some play-in, and they'll just get directly to the cup or something like that. Turts, yes, we will sort of look back at our predictions.
For sure. I need time.
That might be a holiday one, like we do before the holiday.
Well, I also need to do some work on that, and I haven't been around my desk. I've been too busy unpacking boxes, so I'll get to that eventually. Yeah.
But it's good to be back with the community. It was fun. We will be back soon to do another show, probably once they make the decision on Prince. We'll be back on for Jeffrey P. Nesker, for Mike Newell. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.
Get well soon, Mikey Singh.
Yes, get well soon, Mike Singh. Cheers, y'all.
All right, I'm going to hit the button. Go.
And wait. And baby, I'm TFC till I die.